world just like a day that's breezy. This motivation for the people when this classic Bible teaches. Hey, 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 hey. Motivation.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KeversVoice.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Now, you can't live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant-quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
Yeah. I love my HBCU and Bob. I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU and man. I hope my team that won, yeah. I hope my team that won, yeah. Man. I hope my team that won, yeah. I hope my team that won, yeah. I tune into the SportsLab to see my team won along. If they long, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, too bad. Now how much do they think? That's Cavil. You know what he's talking about. They know what they be talking about. They can press the analyst. If you know them like I know them, they gon' take me if they won along. So listen to Professor. Yes. And pay attention, he gon' to the left. Learn today, how you see it, how they play, boys. Learn today, how you see it, how they play. We represent that me out here. Say what's up to Tennessee State, to the
This is Dr. Cavil.
Dr. Cavil's inside HBCU SportsLab.
Just wanted to give you an
update, and we're moving.
Oh, you got feedback there. Get about cutting it down there. Make sure you don't get the feedback on there on Charles and Mike's side there. This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU SportsLab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Just wanted to give an update and say this is as we move forward with the show. We'll be adding some new team members, so we'll give you some updates on what's going on there. But we're going to get right into it because we got a full jam-packed show and we're ready to go. So with that, without further ado, let's jump it over to Charles and go over to Mike. Mike, what are some of the HBCU news of the day?
Well, greetings everybody. Happy Tuesday. It is Taco Tuesday for those of you who don't remember. So I'm going to get my Taco Tuesdays and I'm going to get my margarita. Unfortunately, in the midst of COVID-19, Dr. Cavil and my esteemed co-host over there, CB, we've got a number of sanctions levied by the NCAA. And at the top, and what comes near and dear to us here in the SWAC and based out of Texas, is that Prairie View A&M has released an official statement, but unfortunately is preparing for academic punishment. Their APR has fallen below rates. There was a report released, and it revealed that both the PVAMU football and men and women's basketball teams achieved unsatisfactory APR scores. As a result, the football team has been ruled ineligible to participate in postseason competition, such as the SWAC championship, man, the NCAA Division I playoffs, man, the Celebration Bowl, man, the women's basketball team, which was starting to ball out of control a little bit behind my cohort's team, Jackson State. The women had a tremendous season. Will be penalized with a shorter penalty. I think they'll be penalized in practice hours, but Prairie View is one of many schools that the NCAA has leveraged sanctions against for APR and falling below academic standards. So that's the separate part. I just wanted to start off that story, unfortunately, leading with my alma mater, the Prairie View A&M, falling to sanctions. And if you check the Twitter routes, some of you guys have been on some of the social media. There's a lot of alumni who are very upset about this, and there's all kinds of blame going out there, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. But it's really unacceptable. It's unacceptable. So.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of that in regards to being unacceptable in so many different ways. With that, before I pass it over and let Charles jump in there with some different news of the day, or maybe get his opinion on that. One thing that I thought came out of that, I know in a lot of ways is news around here are Prairie View A&M University alumni and fans quite upset. But of the 10 schools, I like to do the data and break it down. Of the 10 schools, 5 of them were SWAC for 50%. 3 of them were MEAC for 30%, and 2 of them were Southland for another 20%, making up the 10 schools that earn some type of sanctions coming out of this APR. So you have obviously 80% of those institutions were HBCUs between the MEAC and SWAC. Obviously, SWAC has the largest percentage with 50%. Right behind that is MEAC, as I said. And even in terms of limited resource institution, you have the Southland with another 20%. And this is a Southland program in terms of Stephen F. Austin that they got hit with basketball and baseball, to name a few in terms of football. And obviously, we've seen what they've been able to do on the basketball side. So obviously, we focus on HBCUs because this gives some framework in terms of how challenging it is to do with the low limited resource institutions, as they call it at the NCAA level. What are your thoughts on that, or do you want to jump to some other news of the day?
No. If you look at other schools you mentioned, Stephen F. Austin, McNeese State, Chicago State's men's basketball team were also named as part of that multi-conglomerate. But if you look at the overwhelming number of schools, Coppin State, Alabama A&M's men's basketball, men's track and field, Grambling State's men's track and field, Howard football, a number of which are limited resource. So what the heck is really a limited resource? Because I really tried to dig into that, and I really didn't have really a firm grasp on what the NCAA is deemed limited resources and how the funding is and what the considerations are. What the NCAA is trying to say is that yes, we do have some flexibility with limited resource schools, but we're going to exercise due diligence to make sure schools are actually doing what they're supposed to do. What does that mean? So I had some mixed emotions about that report, and I'll defer to my colleague over at CB to get his thoughts. But I was a little taken aback with that report from the NCAA.
Go ahead, Charles, chime in. What are your thoughts with this news in regards to NCAA APR sanctions?
Well, I think it's obviously disappointing, especially for those respective fan bases in terms of having the low APR scores. But when you take a look, I guess, at the complexity of it, the NCAA is going to have to figure out some other metric, if you will, because year in, year out, low resource schools or HBCUs are negatively affected. And obviously, the APR is not a metric that is helpful whatsoever to HBCUs. And the flip side of it, we see in terms of it not being a true metric, we've seen historically white colleges and universities who have a higher, have the requisite APR score, but they're not graduating their athletes. I think we've seen that at Oklahoma State. We've seen that at Louisiana Tech. So, this metric that we've applied to our HBCUs is obviously not working. It's not working over the past 15 or so years because we're always on the receiving end of the bad news with regards to APR.
Yeah, I'm still scratching my head on a limited resource institution.
I can give you some framework on how they come up with the limited resources about the financial funding and how many of your students at an institution get essentially some type of financial aid, I guess is what you call it, in terms of their limited resources. So that's what they look at it. So they take, I think it's like the bottom 5%, 8% or something like that. And so if your conference have a majority of schools that have that prerequisite, or if you're an institution in itself and you fall within it. So that's how you can get it. So essentially, it's all the HBCUs. I think there were a couple that came out, and then depending on whether they were in a conference where the majority of HBCUs were in, then they were also included in this formula. And that's why you see like some schools out of Southland that are also by NCAA's qualification are named under this limited resource institution. So it's not just HBCUs. Basically, it does include all HBCUs, but it is all these institutions. And it's a formula that they use in regards to the minor amount of financial aid that the institution gets and how that affects athletic aid to some degree. So that's just to give everybody an educational update in terms of what that is. But I know what you're saying, Mike. Yeah, that's all good in terms of the definition. But what does that really mean, and how is that helping what it does? And it goes back to Charles's point. Charles' point, when you look at this in terms of the aggregate, in terms of students graduating, if you don't graduate students at a certain level, or if you go to some of these other studies out there by a professor over at Arizona State in the study that he's done coming from Penn, where he looks at just the Power 5 institutions and some of the what they call major division institutions in basketball, such as the Big East, to name a few of them, American, and you start looking at these other aggregated data where you see African American athletes not graduating at the same level as their peers. So we know there's some disproportionality in the APR number. You can go back historically, and there's some research and studies out there. One of the reasons they came out with the APR is the graduation study rate that the NCAA and a lot of these Power 5 institutions and those top tier basketball institutions were getting hammered because of just what Charles said. They were not graduating their players. So they came out with a formula to do that. These Power 5 institutions with their resources understood the formula. And I'm not saying that HBCUs or limited resource institutions shouldn't, but obviously it's a financial capacity about how they're able to do that. And the data doesn't lie. After a while, after this is repeated and comes over and over again, it has to come to a point where you start looking at these things differently and start saying, this is not working in the way that we planned it to work. So there's some other ways that has to be done. And for that, I remember previous president, Dr. Rudley, really chimed in and was the prevailing president and sat on some of these commissions and said, hey, there's some major problems here. And that's where they actually started doing this actual additional funding and created this limited resources. But we're seeing that's just not enough. And I'd imagine during this COVID-19 pandemic, to bring that full circle all the way back around, that you're going to see this exacerbate in a lot of ways for a lot of these institutions. And again, this is not to escape these HBCUs, and in this case, Prairie A&M, because there are some institutions, one that I teach at Texas Southern University, that has found a formula to do it, but there has to be some strategy about moving forward. I know at the SWAC office, and I'm sure that's the case at the MEAC office, talking to the commissioner, Dr. Charles McCullen, that he's looking at putting some teams together that talks about the institution, particularly Texas Southern, where he helped set it up, and Granger, soon to be Dr. Granger, that is the current VP of Intercollegiate Athletics, that has kept things rolling, and talking about sharing the ideas they understand about moving it forward. I don't want to belabor this point, because I think next week we'll have a chance maybe to go a little deeper into our entire show to do that. But I did want to make sure we got a couple of other news out there before we end up going to our guests. So with that, Charles, any additional news that you want to provide for?
Yeah, and this is on a somber note, and this comes to us courtesy of Coppin State Athletics by way of HBCU Game Day, our friends over HBCU Game Day. But Coppin State University and its athletic department is mourning the loss of former head women's basketball coach Tori Harrison, who passed away earlier this month from Machado-Joseph disease. And during her time there with the Eagles for 5 seasons, from 1992 to 1997, and from 1992-93, she was the MEAC Coach of the Year, after leading the Coppin State to a 20-9 record with a 12-4 mark in conference play. She guided the Eagles a 61-77 overall record with a 45-37 mark in the MEAC, while also serving as the school's senior women's administrator. So definitely want to send out our prayers to the Coppin State family.
No doubt about that. We certainly need to make sure that we're sending out prayers to them in regards to what's going on there. With that, Mike, any additional news that you had going on?
Yeah, a couple of teams cutting programs. If you recall, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about. I'm getting feedback here.
Okay.
So a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about teams, and their approach, in this COVID-19 crisis. Well, we have at least 13, and this is really the tip of the iceberg. We have at least 13 teams, as announced today, that are cutting spring programs. Furman is cutting baseball and men's lacrosse. Cincinnati, men's soccer program. Bowling Green, baseball program. Old Dominion, wrestling program. Akron, men's cross country, men's golf, men's tennis. And then you get down the list and you look at Morehouse University, which just announced on Monday a round of furloughs and pay cuts and job terminations that will impact the entire campus. So this is part of the implementing the cost reduction plan to counteract anticipated budget deficit for the upcoming school year. While this is triggered in large part by the COVID-19, the cost reductions were prompted by a budget shortfall in September of 2019. And that same statement applies to all of the other programs, from Furman, Cincinnati, Bowling Green, Old Dominion, all the way down to programs such as Morehouse, where they had a budget deficit, but now COVID-19 all of a sudden is now the reason for cutting a lot of these programs or moving to a extended furlough program. So important announcement that's been kind of sweeping through kind of social media and kind of all of the other news releases.
No doubt about it. Great point as you bring that up in terms of what's going on, Mike, in terms of how COVID-19 is really starting to impact a lot of these programs in so many different ways. So wanted to continue with that and give a chance for Charles Bishop to chime back in here with some news that he wants to put out there as well.
Good thing. A former Jackson State University football player and the current Student Government Association president, or past Student Government Association president, Jordan Jefferson. He had a really good thing he did yesterday where he sort of had a hat reveal. We've seen it from high school athletes coming to college, but he had a hat reveal in terms of picking his choice of graduate school, and he has decided to go to Harvard. So tremendous accolades for that young man. He was a Rhodes Scholar finalist. He was also a Jackson State football player, SGA president. So young man has a really bright future. He's also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. Delta Phi chapter.
I know you had to get that in there.
What chapter was that?
The Delta Phi chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I certainly wanted to make sure we got a little bit of that love in there. You know, I thought you might have a reason that you would bring that up. And none other than soon to be next guest is coming in. I think he knows something a little bit about that old gold, that black and old gold, as they say. You know,
but he's young. We're gonna have to put him back online. I don't care.
Man, that's cold. That's cold. That's cold.
You see all this gray right here?
That's cold blood.
It's cold, but it's fair.
Exactly.
I can't believe that we would do this brother like that. And without further ado, as y'all chiming back in, I sent y'all Blue Jeans messages so you can chime back in as we start to get ready for this mail. If you want to try that, so we can make sure we carry it on the radio, because I know a lot of people are out there with a great deal of anticipation, but none other than FAMU, as they introduced not too long ago, Kortne Gosha. A lot of people call it the director of athletics, but you know, VP of intercollegiate athletics. And as we say in our world, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, we say Brother Gosha. So we want to make sure that we recognize him as much as possible. Let's give some love out to none other than Mr. Gosha in all seriousness. How's it going, brother?
How's it going, brother?
Yeah, we're doing well. See if you get a little bit in terms of your volume there. How's the volume on y'all side sound coming?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
All right, how's it going? He put the audio back on. How's it going, brother? Go shake. Try it again then.
Everything's going well. Serious.
So no doubt about it. Still having a little volume issue there. We're gonna see if we can work through it in terms of your sound there. How y'all get him on that side, Charles and Mike?
Not really getting him.
Not really getting him.
All right.
Can you hear me better now?
It's very low on your side, Kortne.
All right. Can you hear me a little bit better now?
It's a little better.
Little better. Little better.
All right. Let me try this. Hold on a second.
Go ahead. As he's hooking that up and chiming back in there, we might work on seeing if we can send it to a different platform. We're going to email to chime back in on the Zoom side to make sure that we have your voice there. So with that, let me go back to Charles and give us some additional news of the day that you might have as we work on bringing Brother Gosha in here in terms of what we have here.
Well, sure thing. I think all the talk has been in regards to kind of the negative side of the APR, but on the positive side, Jackson State, they are recognized as having one of the higher APR scores in all of HBCU football. So I wanted to just say kudos to the athletic department at Jackson State for getting it done, especially with the highest APR scores in football.
Oh, man, look at that. Mike, I know he's gonna find a way to get them in there a little bit like that. He did it so quick, Mike, too. Mike,
I was just waiting for it to come. I was just wait for it. It was coming. In all seriousness, no, good, terrific job by JSU. So, 10th year in a row, they received favorable NCAA APR scores, and out of all of their teams, Jackson State team were placed in the NCAA penalty box, so to speak. So penalty rise when the scores fall before 9:30, and all of Jackson State's 16 sponsored sports are eligible for the postseason play. So that's hats up not only to the management but to the culture of the university. So I give credit where credit is due. Congratulations to Jackson State.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to shout out to all the riders up there. We're not gonna let you down. You see, I had to put on the cap. I represented in multiple ways. So we showing the rattlers down there out of the MEAC. Look at the love. We deal with all HBCUs. Obviously, we do a lot of sunshine right here in our backyard of Texas and Houston in terms of what's looking on there. And it looks like we got Kortne back in. He's making it work. A brother, man of alpha, they're going to figure it out. They're going to find a way to shine and let that light come out. So without further ado, you ready to go, Kortne? We got you back?
Yes, sir. Get better. We're ready to roll.
Oh, let's get to it. Let me go down your bio a little bit in terms of coming in to Florida A&M. Most recently out of the Miami, University of Miami in Florida, in terms of working with their athletic program. You made your way through Mercersboro from Jacksonville State, where you worked 3 years as equipment manager. So you really have literally climbed up the ladder. Where a lot of people start proverbially at the bottom. So now you're here, as we hear it on a lot of those rap songs that are out there. Then student manager for 2007 into July 2011 before being hired full-time, the coordinator of operations facility. Then you moved to day-to-day operations, plan team travel, drafted athletic department apparel contract, served as camp director of summer, coordinated events, the use of the athletic facility, coordinated $47 million of Paul Snow Stadium project before leaving his post in 2012. As you continue to work for eventually what has led you to the head individual over the athletic programs at Florida A&M. And as you know, as they talk about down there in terms of the Rattlers, strike again. We're going to take you back to the beginning and then come back. But before we do that, talk a little bit about why FAMU was the place for you.
First off, I appreciate you all having us on, and any opportunity we can to what I call spread the gospel about the best university in the country. We take advantage of it. But I think one of the things.
Here we go. Oh,
okay. Y'all know how we roll on the hill. But no, to your point, I've been blessed and fortunate to have some experiences where, quite frankly, I've done it all. And I was exposed to intercollegiate athletics at a very young age, and just in the right places at the right time. But I was down in Coral Gables in South Florida, minding my own business. When
that's your story, you're gonna stick with it.
That's it.
Minding your own business in Coral Gables.
I was minding my own business in Coral Gables. Okay. We had a few good men that came and visited with me and talked about the vision that they have for this wonderful university. And if you know anything about me and my path, everywhere I've been at some point it's been a little bit of a turnaround job. And, I saw the vision, I saw the opportunity and potential at this university, and I was sold at that point. And so, we were just about 6 months in on the highest of 7 hills, and, we're trying to get it done, and that's part of it.
No doubt about it. Before I let these two gentlemen jump in and ask some follow-up questions to really get into some in-depth information about FAMU, we want to talk a little bit about yourself in a lot of ways in regards to where you're actually from.
So I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama, product of kind of where football is king, so to speak. And,
yeah. I lived there for a while. They think over there in that part.
No doubt.
So with that, that's also SWAC country, SIAC country for those HBCU fans out there. Big time football from the Power 5, SEC. People know about that with Alabama and Auburn. But we're going to focus a little more on the HBCU perspective. Where did you go to school in Birmingham as you decided to make your way to college, and where did you go there?
So I went to Shays Valley High School, and then ultimately did my undergrad at Jacksonville State University. But if you're from Birmingham, you really grow up on the Magic City Classic, and that's an experience like none other.
Yeah, that's what we call in HBCU. Lord, we call that a bucket list. If you haven't put that on your bucket list, especially in recent times, it's always been big, but it's really become a tremendous place. And one of the things that I really tell people that they want to experience of that event, it is certainly the largest HBCU tailgating experience out there in terms of all the fans that tailgate around that stadium. And in some cases, some people may even say one of the top tailgate in all of football or college football in that case. So it is big time. It's official. It always comes up the top 5 programs for a long time, 2 or 3 year stint. They were one of the largest in terms of attendance, but they always fall in about top 5, some in top 3 there in regards to that. So you're right on the spot talking about the Magic City Class with the SWAC. But don't let me get you in trouble as we talk too much about SWAC and MEAC. You're going to scare some folks out there. Where we trying to recruit y'all, and that's not what we do. We gonna stay away from that stuff the other day. Now you can call me on the side and then get in my ear, tell me, hey, and I promise you, it won't get out there until you say release it, Dr. Cavil, but that's a different question. So again, brother Gosha, let me tell you something. I know you learned quite a bit about your field, but don't get in that trip. Don't put that out there.
No. We're not gonna put that atmosphere. Okay, but go ahead. But to be frank, we do have some great relationships in the SWAC and competing against in our non-conference schedule. But just to set the record straight, we are proud members of the MEAC, and we appreciate what I.
Yes, when you have your colleague over there, Dr. Scott over at Southern University, talking about the rivalry game.
Oh yeah.
Southern and how that is back on the schedule, and it's my understanding there may be some works. I don't know if you're able at liberty to talk about it in terms of the extension of pushing that game even further. I know obviously last year, big time matchup, big time game with Southern traveling to Tallahassee with the Rattlers getting it done under Coach. Make sure you tell my buddy down there, Coach, much love. He shot us out. He done left Prairie View, and he down there doing his thing with home, so we accepted that.
Yes, tell Coach Simmons hi.
Hey, let me tell you something. When Coach Simmons was at Prairie View, I tried to get camouflage football gear. Now that he's at FAMU, I'm invoking my fraternal bond with you to pull rank. Don't say nothing. But I just want some FAMU camouflage football gear because he wouldn't make it happen. No pressure. I'm just trying to get you to make some things happen. That's all.
So go ahead.
You never know.
All right.
That's what he said.
That's too much. So you see on this show, you have just some full circle, full disclosure for all the viewers out there. You have Mike Washington, as you can tell with his Prairie View shirt on, with the alpha paddle in the back. Yes, we are still a non-hazing organization. We need to put that out. He did his undergraduate studies in chemical engineering at Prairie View A&M University. You have Charles to the right. He also is his brother, a man of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, going through the chapter there at Jackson State University. He talked about that a little bit with the young man that had his hat taking ceremony as he finished with the football program there and now is taking his talents to Harvard for graduate school as he was able to get that done coming out of his chapter. So we're proud graduates there. Myself, undergrad is at Prairie View A&M University. I was brought in, make sure I say that right, I was brought in, none of that other stuff, by that young man right there, Michael Washington, so blame everything on him. But all of us have this unique connection that we all did graduate studies at Texas Southern University. Mike, the executive MBA program over there. Charles, which I'm really excited, in the Master of Science in Sports Studies and Sports Leadership, brother Kortne, as you appreciate that side of the academic field over there. at Texas Southern University, where we opened that program most recently, and I did my master's and a graduate PhD doctoral degree over at Texas Southern University. So we do all that in full disclosure, so people don't think that we're going back and forth. But let Charles jump in here with this opportunity, since Mike had a chance to say some things, and we'll keep on with this conversation as we build towards the things that you're doing at FAMU. Before I do let Charles jump in here, I know that you're having a big program that you're talking about now, and we'll bring that back again so you can talk about it again. But in terms of this champion program, talk a little bit about that, and then I'll let Charles jump right in there with the following question.
Yeah, so for us, we kind of hit the ground running in a lot of different areas. We're a very high profile program. Our fan base is rabid. And one of the things that I'm really big on is, okay, put your money where your mouth is. And if we really want to take our program and we want to have a national championship caliber program, which we do, we've got a great coach, we've got great student athletes on the competition surface, but also in the classroom, then it takes resources. And, we're not shy about it. And, whatever, I could say this, whatever adversity is ever in front of a Rattler, that we always overcome that adversity. And so we've got some facility infrastructure issues, and, we've set some high expectations. We're going to go get after it. And so we launched the All In campaign, and that is directed specifically to our football program and upgrading football facilities. And so after being on the market with the campaign for about a week, we've crossed the $100,000 threshold and working our way to our goal. So anybody that wants to join and help us get to our goal, join the Rattler Athletic Fund, FAMUathletics.com, #invest.
Certainly, that's tremendous. With that, perfect time for Charles to jump back here.
Well, sure thing. And I have to say that your Rattler fans, they're blowing up my phone right now with questions. So one of the questions that they do have, and it goes in regards to facilities, is whether the recently announced Fieldhouse renovation initiative is phase one of an overall Bragg Stadium overhaul, or is it an upgrade to an entirely new project?
So it's phase one of a 3-phase project. Phase one is going to on the football operations complex, coaches' offices, locker rooms, etc. Phase two is actually going to be major renovation to Bragg Memorial Stadium and a potential expansion to the football operations building. Phase three, which is our long-term goal, is really a new stadium that really encompasses all of those type of things. And so, one of the things I believe that really gets people engaged is for them to see the vision become a reality. And this isn't just lip service. I tell people I don't talk about what I think. I talk about what I know. And we've done it at other places. I'll talk about Jacksonville State in 2008. Our football program had really become mediocre. We invest $47 million into that football program and build a stadium that's probably one of the top 5 in FCS football in 3 years playing for a national championship. So we're talking about what we know, folks, and my fans have really bought into that, and they've stepped up in a big way. So we're just getting started on it.
Yeah, and let me follow up real quick in terms of your fan base. They're known as a rabid fan base. They love their Florida A&M. But what were your expectations, I guess, coming into this rabid fan base?
So, I think the expectations are very high. Coming from University of Miami, who's another rabid fan base, at the Power 5 level, those fan bases don't hold a candlestick to these Rattlers. I mean, we have that live, grow up, they raise their kids. You've got some more seasoned Rattlers, and they're all involved. They love, obviously, some of the things that we're doing, but it's all about love and lifting our university up to the promise in which we know it can be. And so that's what it's all about. I'll take that any day. Get phone calls, texts late at night, and that's okay. Because I've been in institutions where it's been the other. You didn't have anybody calling. And so welcome that. I love it.
Sure thing.
Thank you for sharing it. Mike, did you want to follow up with a question?
First of all, congratulations again. We joke and play a lot but we're very serious about the business of HBCU sports and excited about this move. I want to talk a little bit about, your background. You've had experience with negotiating a contract with Nike, $10 million apparel deal. You've been involved with $120 million athletics facility master plan, so significant capital projects. So, my question to you, and I know I hear a little bit about the all-in-one, is what is your vision for bringing more capital funding or an infusion of capital funding to the FAMU program? I know there's, concerns with the infrastructure, but what's the plan 3, 4, 5 years out for the infusion of more capital funding into the university?
Absolutely. So I think it starts with this, and that's a vision. You got to have strategic and sustainable leadership to cast the vision and then get people on board with that vision. Be the best in the class that you're in. Okay. Yes, I've been at University of Miami. I've been at Middle Tennessee. I've been at Jacksonville State. And I think one of the things that I can hold my hat on is when we got to those institutions, especially from a facility infrastructure perspective, we grew that brand. We did $40 million in capital projects at Middle Tennessee. We were the first football team in the country who had the flashing football lights in our stadium. A lot of people don't understand that. So after we unveiled that, University of Georgia called me and said, "Hey, what is that you got?" And so we started a little bit of a trend, but creating that special identity at Jacksonville State, it's the best. It's probably one of the top 5 facilities in FCS football in the country. At the University of Miami, built the Carroll Sofer indoor practice facility and did about $50 million in capital projects in my short term there. And so that formula has worked at 3 other places. And there's no reason why it can't work at the best HBCU in the country.
Okay, so yeah, you were going really good until you said I love you, brother Gosha.
We got to tell him that Mike gets in trouble for this all the time in the studio when we were doing the individual studio, and I still have the mixer over here. And so, Mr. Kortne Gosha, because I want to make sure that you understand this part of the secret. Anytime that Mike gets in trouble and gets out of tongue, if you would, and I get to start taking too many of the licks, if he a little flashback. Oh, that's right. I'm not supposed to say that. But the point is that I can mute his mic. So if you are not careful, brother Gosha, there's a button called mute, and it might happen in your life. So that's just fair warning.
It's actually called the mute mic button.
We brag different. I told you, we brag different.
I love it. No doubt about it. In all realness, please continue with it. That's great. Thanks. I'm going to let Charles come back in here, but before I do that, I want to take it off the field. I'm sure we got a chance to talk about on the field with some questions there and coaches and things of that nature. But taking it off the field and to some degree into the classroom. Obviously, a report came out today in regards to the NCAA and APR. FAMU in itself has to deal with that in some ways, and men's basketball, just at least this past season, has dealt with that. What is your formula and your strategy, if you're willing to share with us, your experience about dealing with APR, academic progress rate? Because we've obviously seen that it has hit HBCUs in, as NCAA terms, limited resource institutions, which are not just HBCUs, but obviously our fans focus on that, and so we see that out there a lot. If you would, please provide us some insight, if you would, and some wisdom, possibly, to share with the fans out there trying to figure this out from that perspective, how you deal with APR. If you have a plan moving forward, what is it?
Right. Well, I think, philosophically, HBCUs kind of get the black eye. It's because, I would say opportunities and access. Now, as an athletic director, I think fundamentally when you start to get into compliance and academic issues, that it starts with accountability. Okay. So if you don't set the tone as the AD and aren't involved in these processes from day one, okay, that means, okay, who are the type of kids that your coaches are recruiting? I get it. We all want to win, but we got to win in the classroom. All right. So it starts there. Then making sure that, you can have best football coach in America, but if you don't give them the resources to be successful as a program, meaning academic advisors, people who can guide student athletes through whatever challenges they have. Mental health is a big issue that sometimes sidetracks student athletes academically. These are real issues. And so our focus has been on the student athlete experience. If you get that right, if you get compliance and academics right through the student athlete experience, then everything else becomes exponentially more difficult, exponentially more easier. And I tell our staff here all the time, hey, compliance and academics is going to be our offense and defense, right? So if we get those things right, everything else will pan out. And, I think that's one of the things that the formula at the lower resource institution level has been a little bit skewed, because I think we put the emphasis on, hey, getting them in, getting them eligible, but then are they truly being successful academically? We might get a year or two out of them before it catches up with us, but that's not a good formula for long-term success. And yes, FAMU, we've had our challenges. We have. We're still facing some of them, to be honest with you. My goal is to make sure that those days are behind us and keep us on a path that moves us forward. APR, it get out of whack quickly between changes, between personnel changes, or not even having adequate resources. And I think as an athletic director, the way that the NCAA measures things, you want to get that right, because postseason bans can have a big effect, whether it's the financial penalties that you pay because you're already a lower resource institution, or the limitation of access and opportunities for people that look like you and I. And so they're reducing scholarships, they're reducing postseason competition. All of those things are opportunities that our young people strive for additional opportunities, whether that be to play professional sports, et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely an issue, and our strategy is to kind of start with the basics. As athletic director, we're involved from day one. The kids that we're recruiting, we want to make sure that they're matriculating through the process, and that we're providing our coach and his staff with the resources to be successful.
Certainly, I appreciate that. Charles, did you want to chime back in here and with a follow-up question?
Yeah, I think one of the questions I've always wanted to ask an athletic director is, how do you ensure that you have the resources to make sure that you have everything that you need to keep your APR above board, if you will? What is the pitch to your boosters, to your fan base, to whatever, to contribute to, the theme of being all in, and that is one component of it.
Yeah. So to your point, it's just that. I think you've got to tell the truth. Everybody likes the shiny stuff. They give to the facility projects, or they want to give to the salary and all those type of things. But they have to understand, to win a championship, it's a process. Nick Saban talks about it all the time, the process. He focuses on running an athletic department is a process. And, when you identify and relate that to your boosters, there has to be a certain level of commitment. All right, you want to be champions? Okay, this is what it takes to get there. Okay, if you're not willing to get there, okay, well, let's it's a good. This is who we are. Then we're not a championship program, and I haven't met a Rattler who's not expecting the championship. So it's been pretty in Tallahassee.
Right. Yeah.
I can appreciate that. We call this Dr. Will's Inside the HBCU SportsLab, and the dean of college HBCU sports, and I'm saying interview in a lot of ways. You're taking us to school, so I really like the way that you're handling this master class. I had to find a way to put it in there. If I went to play the music, that's right. Yeah. In all seriousness, there's an article when you almost first came into Florida A&M with one of the big rivals you have in the MEAC at North Carolina A&T. And obviously on the football field, the Rattlers have gotten the better of this deal on the field the last 2 years. Obviously, it didn't play out in some conditions in terms of the Rattlers being able to get to the Celebration Bowl. One, in terms of the APR we talked about earlier, and then in terms of tough loss after doing that 2 years ago and couldn't close the deal with Bethune-Cookman. That's another discussion I'm sure that you're ready to get that off your tip. But with that,
every cat only has 9 lives. So.
That's well said. Well said. We'll take that up with Mr. Lynn Thompson. See his view with that. I'm sure a good colleague of yours over there at Bethune-Cookman University. But with that said, in that particular news article, you talked about part of your responsibilities as the VP of Athletics at Florida A&M University or any institution is to look at things like that and look at your program in terms of what are the next steps. And obviously we joked earlier, and I'm not saying that we want to get on that level, but talk about what do you look at in terms of evaluating where you are in terms of your program overall, conference affiliation, looking at other opportunities like distance of travel, things of that capacity that go in to making that decision, whether it is to stay with the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, a program that I'm sure that you're proud to be affiliated with, or looking at some other conference out there, even if it is the SWAC or what have you. Just to clear that up, what do you go through in terms of doing your due diligence in your strategic planning and analysis? If you would share that part of it, I'm sure we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think every AD who sits in the chair at some point has to kind of put, pencil to paper and really look at the landscape of intercollegiate athletics. I mean, it's the nature of the beast. I think every AD does it every year. Does what makes sense for, is this putting our kids in the best position to be successful, to win in the classroom, to win on the playing surface. And so regionally, there's a lot of conversation. COVID-19 has really thrown a lot of people, kind of a curveball with a little extra junk on it. And I was talking to some FBS ADs this week, and they're like, "Hey, we want to play you in every sport. You want to know why? It's because we can put our kids on a bus and get to you in 3 hours and turn around and come back." It's a real issue, and I think it would be premature. And I've gotten the questions. I've seen some of the blogs out there, and I think it is speculation at this point. But again, we're proud members of the MEAC. The relationships that we have, with elite academic institutions. But again, great partnerships, and the fact that, we own our own classic with Bethune-Cookman. Those things that you don't want to quite upset the apple cart. And so you do have to be strategic. The landscape does change very quickly. We saw that with A&T's departure. I'm not going to get Coach Washington's blood pressure up, but as you can see, Coach Simmons has kind of run them right on out of the league. So
you heard it here first.
Wow. Man, we need some sound effects for that one.
Right. Man, a wonderful conversation as we start to come out up to the top of the hour and come to a close. Wanted to allow Mike or Charles to ask a final follow-up question, and then we'll certainly give you the floor to share again the Champions campaign and any closing remarks or anything that you want to share that we didn't ask you. Mike, you want to follow up?
Yeah, I think he was getting into kind of the meat of my question. You talked about your strategic approach, but you step into a very dynamic situation with COVID-19. And given you don't have COVID-19, now you got transfer portal to manage, maybe a delayed season. Do you have an audible in your playbook? And if so, what does that look like, 3 months down the line, or 6 months? What's your audible and your contingency look like?
That's actually the question that I had as well, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this. 3 months ago, our strategic plan was one thing. With aligned with that. COVID-19 has changed the game. It's changed the way that we do business. If football is shortened or doesn't happen, the business is going to change again. And that's going to affect some of your other sports. And so it's hard to really say what the audible may be, because as we assess it, there's 4, 5, 6 different options based off of, where things could go. it's all tied to financial decisions. I think, there's some extremes where, not having football for some programs could be in the tens of millions of dollars in losses. I know for FAMU, football generates 80% of our revenue. And so if that doesn't happen, there's some very tough decisions that we have to make to get through the process. I thank God that I have a great president and board of trustees who, as an institution, have put us in a solid financial position. But then strategically, we're going to make sure that we operate, in the best interest of our student athletes, not jeopardizing their health or safety. But we also got to be good stewards of our money. And that's something that, we felt very strongly about when we came here. I inherited a $2.4 million deficit 6 months ago. We've cured that. We fixed that. And so, again, I tell people my job as athletic director is to hit the curveballs. This one's a little different with COVID-19, but we need to hit the curveballs and make sure that we work very hard to put our kids in the right position.
Yeah, COVID-19 is a real knuckleball.
Absolutely. So that's a knuckleball sinker.
Right.
Charles, I know that you said that was part of your question. Did you have the additional one that you wanted to get in there, or was that good?
Well, no, it was along those lines in terms of how do you manage, I guess, dealing with the COVID-19 and trying to do things in the best interest of your student athletes.
No doubt about it. Thank you for that. One thing before we turn it over to you is talk a little bit more about the importance of the relationship that people outside of athletics alumni may not realize of how important it is to really have the VP of Intercollegiate Athletics, or the AD, as well as the president, chancellor of the university, and the board of governing strategy, having all three of those parties along with the alumni on the same page in terms of moving the overall university forward, as well as moving athletics forward.
So, that's a really, really good question. And, I'll say the thing that has kind of been our formula here, and you can't do, neither one of those will work in silos without one another. So if you're not in line with your president, your board of trustees, and to be honest with you, your National Alumni Association, you don't stand a chance. And that's just the way that the game is played. But when you start talking about big time college athletics, in which we feel very confident that's you've got to make sure that strategically you're in constant communication, because things change, but then everybody's on the same page with the vision moving forward. Okay. There are tough conversations in there. Sometimes you have to break some, I guess you could say, traditions to move the department forward. That's a tough conversation in some cases. But again, I tell people, hey, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I haven't done or can't do. But this isn't lip service about what I believe or what I think. Again, we talked about the process and what really the opportunities that I've been blessed with. We've done it from the equipment manager who's on the low end of the totem pole as an athletic department, all the way up to now being an athletic director. And so that's one of the things that I believe have prepared me to lead and to work with my president and work with my board of trustees and my National Alumni Association, is because you've truly come up in the industry where you've had to do every level. So conceptually, I understand what it takes to be an equipment manager at the D1 level. Okay. Right. I understand what it means to run a football program. I've been a director of football operations, all those type of things. I've sold tickets and all of those type of elements that become a part of it. And so sometimes, again, you have to work on alignment, because somebody may have a great idea conceptually, but mechanically it doesn't work. It doesn't fit into the process. Here at FAMU, we've had to do a lot of things. We've had to do a lot of things quickly, and I tell people, hey, if I say it, you can take it to the bank. And one of the things here, and I didn't realize how much people really, kind of watch you via social media or whatever. We said we were going to put out season tickets on this date. Boom, they were out. People were like, well, they've never been out this early. Hey, we're going to do something different. People see me out in the community. They're like, well, we've never seen this. Well, hey, it's a different flavor. And most recently, we just started the football operations facility project. Nothing had been done to that building for our championship football program in 37 years. And so that changed today. That changed 2 days ago when we started to move that project forward. And so, we want to take athletics, and I'm not going to even say HBCU athletics, but athletics by storm. We have a great product. Our kids are phenomenal. And not only do they compete at a high level on the playing surface, but they're doing it in the classroom. We just had our second semester of 3.0 or higher as a department. We finished with a 3.33 departmental GPA. And, the highest honor for any athletic director is to see a kid walk across the stage with a degree in one hand and a championship ring on the other.
Thank you, Brother Gosha, for coming on and sharing your vision of athletics, particularly for Florida A&M University. You talked about the All-In campaign, hashtag fans up, hashtag leave no doubt. Everybody can go to the athletic page to get more information and get in on that. As you see, I have a FAMU hat on to support you on that. And so with that, this is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU SportsLab show with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, coming to you with the VP of Athletics at Florida A&M University, Kortne Gosha. Thank you for joining us.
Now, we appreciate it, brothers, and y'all take care. 06.
All right. Thank you, baby. 06 out.
With that, as we'll start closing out and bringing to you in terms of how we do it. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Kortne Gosha, the athletic director at Florida A&M University, better known as FAMU. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Just wanting to continue to bring it to you as we do with all the love there.
I want to say real quick before we close out, I encourage everybody to go to HBCU Game Day, and the HBCU Voices. Dr. Cavil put on a master class, a real TED Talk, if you will, on the business of HBCU sports. I want to say kudos. That was phenomenal. And I encourage everybody to go find it on YouTube or find it posted wherever it is. But it is a real master class on understanding the various dynamics of HBCU, the business of HBCU sports.
Couldn't have said it better myself, CB. Well put. Great job, Doc.
Thank you for sharing that. Please check that out. Let me know your thoughts. Let us know your thoughts of the show. You see, as we're upgrading and giving you new information. Again, this is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU SportsLab. Lecture dismissed. We'll talk to you next week.
But if they won, who passed?
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango